Let's get into today's top story, and that is the devastating effects of what is happening with the World Economic Forum right now, playing out in real time. We are watching this unfold, and boy, what a prescient day, what a poignant day when we have the death of Queen Elizabeth and the ascension of now King Charles. He's officially king this afternoon. There'll be 10 days of mourning in England. But yes, King Charles, proud member of the World Economic Forum. Not only just proud member of the World Economic Forum, he is actually the member of the World Economic Forum who created the Great Reset. Very, very important. I want to talk a little bit more about that and talk about what's happening in the Netherlands today. But he created the Great Reset. It wasn't Klaus Schwab. It was the Prince of Wales, Charles. And very, very important to talk about. So when the Great Reset was officially launched in 2020, it was not done by Klaus Schwab or Bill Gates or anybody else, but in fact, the Prince of Wales, heir of the British throne at the time. Here he was at the Great Reset speech, kicking it off. Watch.
Case, we have no alternative, because otherwise, unless we take the action necessary and we build again in a greener and more sustainable and more inclusive way, then we will end up having more and more pandemics and more disasters from ever accelerating global warming and climate change. So this is the one moment, as you've all been saying, when we have to make as much progress as we can.
Now, a lot of people don't know that. A lot of people don't know that he was the one, in fact, fully making the announcement on his website. Grover, our dog, can't stand it either, fully making the announcement on the website of the Prince of Wales and the Duchess of Cornwall. Now, if you go to the website today where this statement lived, the website is now being updated and removed. So this is now down. Look at that. The website is temporarily suspended following the announcement of the death of the Queen, Her Majesty the Queen Elizabeth II. So the Prince of Wales, Duchess of Cornwall, the announcement for the Great Reset page, you can't get to it at the moment, because they're redoing the whole website in order to change it and update it for his lordship.
Because His Royal Highness is no longer the Prince of Wales.
Right.
He is now HRH, the King of everything.
King of everything.
I don't know his official
Wow, what a
title.
day we live in where it's like the king inherits the throne and a website.
Right.
Yeah.
I want someone to be able to just update my website for me like that, you know? So you can't find the announcement about the Great Reset on their website. No, but you can find it still. The tweet still exists where he kicked this off. The Prince of Wales, Duchess of Cornwall. The Great Reset initiative is designed to ensure business and communities build back better. Oh, build back better. He could do build back better by putting sustainable business practices at the heart of their operations as they begin to recover from the coronavirus pandemic. Watch to find out more. World Economic Forum, the launch of the Great Reset. So I don't think people know this.
No.
I mean, I know some people are aware of this. I see definitely some people saying he's a member of the WEF, and not just a member, but the member, right? Very, very important to understand how this all unfolds, because what we're seeing play out in the Netherlands over the past 24 hours is deeply disturbing. We're going to show you the disgusting moments of government overreach in just a moment in the Netherlands. The videos are absolutely stunning, but first some context here. You don't need to go any further than the small town of Stro in the Netherlands to see its effects of globalists destroying sovereign powers. Stro is a small hamlet in the Dutch province of North Holland. It's about as beautiful as you can imagine. Look how just gorgeous it is there, with picturesque gardens, adorable windmills, of course, friendly people, coastal cottages, little train rides that you can go on. You can drive along and have some beers on a pedal bike. You can also go to local museums and have a blast along the coast there. It's about as removed from the hustle and bustle of the big city as you can get. You can even stay at the guest house, which is a lazy cottage called the Lazy Cottage, for just $66 a night. It's adorable. You can ride a bike. You can do all of that. 9 years ago, Stro had a population of about 1,500 people. Thanks to government regulation, cost of living increases, and devastating climate laws, the people here have given up their farms and moved away. Many of them are leaving the Netherlands altogether. According to public records today, the population now just sits over 100. Think about
Jeez.
think about that, right? That's why it's not surprising that Stroh would become ground zero, of course, for the farmer protests, which unfolded there. This was the meeting place. This was the place where it happened. This was the announcement as significant transport disruptions due to ongoing farmer protests in Stroh. Thousands of farmers, citizens descended on this area to say enough is enough. Even if they weren't farmers, they came out in support of it, right? We showed you these videos. They came out to show their solidarity with the way of life. After all, the Netherlands is the second leading provider of food to the world. I think most people don't realize that. And it's such a tiny country. It's so densely packed. It kind of reminds me of New Jersey in the United States. It's the most densely population-packed state. And it's the garden state. So it also provides... right, tomatoes and all sorts of produce.
And I wonder, though, when you think about the grand exodus of farmers because they can no longer sustain their business, right? If you can sort of juxtapose this with some of the articles, the news articles that we see popping up every now and again. Have you seen these articles saying that densely populated urban spaces are now the only way to sustainably live? Like we have to all live in cities on top of each other. It reminds me of, if you've read the book Ready Player One, the stacks, where we have to stack up houses in order to use resources collectively, right? This is the way we have to live if we're going to survive the planet destruction. And so in sort of like coaxing us away from living off the land so that we are dependent on governments, you know, it feels very... coaxing, if you will.
Well, this is all the Great Reset. This is exactly what they talked about.
Yeah.
I mean, this is laid out exactly, and we're going to get to some of the sound of that, how this is laid out in this idea of collectivism, you know, this working together in this way where, you know, you will own nothing. You will be happy about it. We're going to give it up. But we're seeing it really unfolding now in the Netherlands over the past few weeks, but specifically over the past 24 hours now. The Netherlands is a country of 4 million cattle, 13 million pigs, 104 million chickens, and just over 17 million people. It is Europe's biggest meat exporter, with a total area of just over 41,000 square kilometers, and a fifth of this is water. It's one of the world's most densely populated countries with the EU's highest density of livestock. Think about that, right? So this is target number one for the World Economic Forum. It is the petri dish of which they are testing everything out. In January, the government voted. The history here is in January when the government voted with pressure from the WEF to cut in half its nitrogen production by 2030. It's all part of the larger Klaus Schwab, King Charles Great Reset. Watch.
I just see the need for such a dialogue, and I see the need for action. I see the need for a great reset.
And of course, the author of the book, and in following with King Charles, then the Prince of Wales, on his Great Reset plan, Western leaders fell in lockstep with Schwab's Great Reset. They were all parroting this same dialogue. They were taking these talking points around the world and using them. It's amazing to even look at, by the way, if you look at King Charles' tweet, it's amazing to say King Charles, right? But when he was Prince of Wales, and you look at his tweet, and he literally highlights Build Back Better.
Right.
Where do you think Biden and the Democrats got that phrase, right? For the Build Back Better plan. They got it right from here. They got it right from...
Well, if this was, though, he was speaking during the pandemic before after Build Back Better was already launched as a campaign. Because I don't think that timeline works.
What I'm saying is this tweet is 2 years old.
Right, but the Build Back Better was a campaign slogan for candidate Biden, I think. Okay. Let's not dwell on that.
I don't know where it came. Look, it all comes out of think tanks. It all comes out of these groups that they're launching these talking points. My point is that none of this operates in a vacuum, where this is just like, I have an idea. That's all workshopped. It all comes out of this. But
together. It also feels like code speak, right? We've talked many times about how what the United States does. Britain sort of falls in line, says, "Hey, we're your buds. We're doing that too. Whatever you want," right? And so. It feels very much like sort of Western partnership of the same agenda. Right.
Well, yeah. And of course, all of this launched officially in 2020 and came together under this one plan. Western leaders all of this sort of code speak fell in line with this Great Reset agenda. Even before the pandemic, it was all about consolidating power and taking away rights of the poor, the middle class, in the name of climate change. Here's Justin Trudeau talking about the Great Reset.
Canada believes that a strong, coordinated response across the world and across sectors is essential. This pandemic has provided an opportunity for a reset. This is our chance to accelerate our pre-pandemic efforts to reimagine economic systems that actually address global challenges like extreme poverty, inequality, and climate change.
Okay, Molly Ringwald with that hair. But the thing is, right, that any time that you think that you have to take away someone's ability to live off the land and take power and consolidate it into, like, away from people who have their own agency to live, right? This is what we're feeling now, is like continue to disenfranchise people to live on their own.
Yeah, and you're going to see here in a moment the evidence about the farmers and the taking of the land, right? I mean, because Netherlands even put in place at the time as this Great Reset was unfolding, they put in place a 25 billion euro budget to make all of this happen. To reduce the nitrogen. But something that wasn't reported at the time was how this money would actually be used. It would be used to kill off their livestock. At the same time, millions were set aside for a very dastardly reason. It's not often I get to use the word dastardly, but I really feel like this word applies here. Once the farmers collapsed, then the government had the money was sitting there on purpose, designed, and it was kept quiet. The money was there on purpose. That as soon as one of these farmers collapsed, that money would be used to buy the farm. That's it. They had to go out, they went out of business, and the government had this kitty of money that was able to swoop in using their newly allotted budget that the government put in place for just such a reason, and the government would simply buy up their farm. Then in June, the government took the second step in all of this, the deadliest step of all. In this process, they published 2 pieces of paper, 2 documents. One was a map showing, this is amazing. One was a map showing the areas that needed to reduce emissions between 12% and 95% in the Netherlands. So they had a map. So all these farmers sort of gathered around this map to see, like, well, where does my farm fit on this map? Oh, 12%? I've got to get rid of 12% emissions in nitrogen? Or am I in the 95%? What do you do if you're a farm that had to get rid of 95%? Close to city centers, right? You're done. You're dead. And then the government would swoop in and take your farm. And so if you lived in Stroh or its surrounding areas, you could look at the map and you could see, how much you had to cut. Were you going to be in deep shit with the government? What are you going to do about it? The second paper they published showed that the percentage of animals and livestock you needed to kill on your farm in order to be compliant. It was like, here, we've created a handy cheat sheet. Here's how many heads of cattle you need to cull in order to be compliant with the government. And of course, now the government admits it was a disaster the way that they rolled this out. And it was, because all these farmers were like, what the hell? Now I've got to literally kill off all of my livestock. But see, the problem is that when in January they printed their initial report and what was going to happen, all of these farmers spent just tons of money buying expensive equipment in order to become nitrogen compliant and to get their emissions down on their farms. So they invested all of this money into their farms, and then they come out with the second report and these documents in the summer, which basically upended the whole thing. It was a total waste of money. All of the money you just spent on this equipment, you can just flush it down the toilet.
Oh, sounds very familiar to restaurants who retrofitted for outdoor dining and then still were shut down because of the pandemic. Right. Sure, yeah, this is a page out of, and now we see these movements inside of different countries, but we also see it inside the United Kingdom too, and they call it rewilding, right? Take your farm that's making dairy or grain or whatever it is, and let's give it back to the land, right? And we'll pay you these tax incentives to rewild. Again, closing down farms that feed people in order to, in the name of Mother Nature, but also it consolidates power, right? And you're still working with, there's a great book on this. I've mentioned it a few times on this show. It's called Rewilding by a woman named Isabella Tree. And it's fantastic. And it talks about all of the ways in which the government is unfriendly for anyone who wants to actually be a farmer. She couldn't sustain it anymore. So she decided to rewild, and she got better taxation, better health help from the government, right? They don't really want independent farmers. They can't control that, right?
Right.
They want a consolidation of food and power and resources that they absolutely can control.
What's hilarious, too, if you think about King Charles, now King Charles, and you think about the British Empire, and you think about these people telling you to rewild your own farm, right? You will own nothing and you'll be happy. And yet, if you go to Queen Elizabeth's Wikipedia page now, it's there, it's still available, you can go look at it today. It shows the entire list of all of the colonization of the British Empire under her watch. And it's like vast. I mean, it takes up a whole page of all of the places that the British Empire.
Right. And she specifically exempted her land from rewilding efforts.
Here it is. I've got it here. Let's take it on my screen here. These are all of, if you go to Queen Elizabeth's Wikipedia right now, this is updated. All of the places that are specifically colonized: Canada, Australia. So all up to the present, under her watch, because she ascended in 1952 as the queen, right? Australia, New Zealand, all the way down the line. Barbados, the Bahamas, and then, of course, turned over some of them back, South Africa, Pakistan, Malta, all of them. But isn't it amazing?
Yeah.
Not surprising.
I mean, yes.
So I think the bottom of that list is places to move.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Now that they've given it back over and they're now independent again, after we've taken everything, all the resources.
In some countries, even for instance, Antigua, which was a British colony and no longer is, they still use the British pound. So the influence and the power remains in places like that, even though they have independence. They have no independence of currency.
So the Dutch farmers have fought back, right? They blocked traffic. The Dutch farmers said, no way. Look at this. They ran over, stopped the highway traffic. Farmers parked their tractors on highways, blocked everything. They then dumped manure on the footsteps of government buildings, right? They went through and started doing that, backing trucks up right to the front of a building and dumping it right in the front of the building. They also blocked major highways with trucks and tractors and burned and wooden blockades. They did all of those things, and they tore down government signs. You can show some of this video if you want. There we go. Yeah, they dumped manure on the footsteps of government buildings. They blocked major highways with all these trucks and piled it up there to say, no, we're not doing this. Then they tore down government signs and renamed towns recently, declaring them the Free States of Boerenlanden, which means farmer land in some villages. So they're now saying this is a free area. This is a farmerland. This is a free state. We'll see how the government takes that. But this isn't surprising. When you take away people's livelihoods, of course, they are going to get angry. Even Klaus Schwab predicted a lot of anger with this great reset. But he's okay with it.
So we have to prepare for a more angry world. And how to prepare? It means to take the necessary action to create a fairer world.
Oh, so we know we're gonna be angry.
I don't like any of that.
He's like a Bond villain, isn't he?
Yes.
Like I'm just waiting for James Bond to show up on his
People are not
secret
going to
island.
like it, but we have to be prepared for that. And elaborate on that part.
Can you play
please.
that? Can you play that part?
Lethal Weapon. It's like, but I'm standing on plastic. The diplomatic community has been revoked.
Can you play that again? I don't know if you can, Philip, or not. But
So we have to prepare for a more angry world. And how to prepare? It means to take the necessary action to create a fairer world.
Yeah, we need to prepare for an angry world because we're going to take away all of your land. We're going to,
Yeah.
Really?
We're going to make decisions that rob you of basic life comforts that you have been used to in modern society.
It's unbelievable. And
isn't that sort of like admitting that they know what they're doing is wrong? Because they're like, we know people aren't going to like this. That's the German woman like that. I know my voters aren't going to like this, but we're going to do it anyway.
Yeah. I was waiting for you to ring in on this one. I was like, he's going to have something to say about that.
Dutch farmers, though, aren't stupid, are they? Absolutely not. They know exactly what this is about. It was about taking their land. Listen.
And how do you feel about the government and the way it's treated the agricultural sector?
We believe it's part of a bigger plan.
Yeah.
And that's why they need our land. They don't need our nitrogen. They need our land. 85% of land is from the farmers. And yeah, they chase us away to get land for building and recreation.
The protests have shut everything down. Food is disappearing because Dutch farmers are fighting back. Now, police acting on behalf of the World Economic Forum are going on the attack. So there's some videos that are really disturbing. We can't really show them to you here, but we're going to show them to you on our private community channel on Rumble and our locals channel. So we think they're important to watch, but we can't show them here. We've already tested them on YouTube and they've already been flagged because they don't want to show you this. What it shows is Dutch farmers being rounded up in snatch and grab moves by the police, thrown into vans and being hauled off. They're attacking protesters. That's exactly what's been happening here. Attacking protesters, throwing them in vans, pulling up, grabbing them. And as people try to fight back, of course, they are arrested. They're attacking police vans. But where are you seeing this in the mainstream media? Are you seeing this anywhere in the mainstream media? We had lunch with 4 Dutch friends the other day. And they were stunned. They said, how do you guys even know about this? Because even in the Netherlands, we don't get coverage of this.
Yes.
This story. And I read through the comments on our videos, and I see so many people. I got an email from somebody, a Dutch person this morning, and said they couldn't believe they were talking to friends, and the friends that are Dutch didn't even know about it because there's just no coverage of this story.
And especially if you live in a metropolitan area and you're still able to go to the grocery market, right? How would you know?
Right.
If there's a concerted effort to keep them from you.
And the police have been putting themselves in out of uniform police. They've been getting involved in protests, according to reports, in undercover operations now. So why, it begs the question, why is all of this happening? I think we played this last week, but I think it's worth playing again to wrap this up. I think David Icke says it absolutely best about what's happening now. Listen.
Why, as the Dutch government, a guy called Rutte, the prime minister, completely owned by the World Economic Forum and Klaus Schwab, why has he just announced that the Netherlands, the second biggest exporter of food in the world, is targeting farmers to destroy them and get them off the land? Which is where all these farming protests in the Netherlands have come from. At a time of food shortages and supply chain problems, you are targeting the second biggest exporter of food in the bloody world to destroy its farming base. Why are you doing that? If people depend on you for what's left of the food, you control them. Where food is abundant and cheap, you do not control them. Where energy is cheap and abundant, you do not control them. Scarcity equals dependency equals control. And that's why they're targeting the food chain, they're targeting the energy supply, they're targeting everything.
Spot on.
Yeah.
Spot on.
So it's interesting right now, as the monarchy changes hands and we don't have this sort of, amiable monarch now on the throne, and we have Charles who has said things like this, like it's time for a reset. This is our opportunity, right? And has been aligned with some of these sort of ne'er-do-wells, right? Mm-hmm. And his brothers.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Unequivocally aligned with ne'er-do-wells. That's a nice word for those people, right? And so the era of amiable monarchs who are above discussion is over. And now we have somebody who we may be more comfortable sort of asking questions about power with this person in the throne. Yeah, and I'm interested to watch how that changes.
And we say amiable, but it's like, that's the amiable on television queen that we see. It's like, we know behind the scenes what,
Well, okay, but the monarchy is not supposed to enact any political will, right? And arguably did protect the wealth of the Windsor family for a long time in ways that I'm sure will continue to be exposed, right? But in terms of like exerting political power, she played this role of neutrality, right? And will we see that now the ascension of the throne is male, and it's a little bit easier to, I'm just saying, like, there was sort of, how is this going to play out? Are we going to now be able to see the hegemony that is
back in play? Right,
is back in play now. That's what I'm saying. I absolutely don't want to speak on behalf or against the Queen at all, right? But it will, that the time will come to talk about this power shift.
Yeah, there's nothing good comes from talking ill about someone as they've passed, but it's certainly worth looking at the hegemony and talking about the power that is now shifting and where this is going.
Well, and quickly, like, it's just like the United States. Like, how much power did she really have? And she probably had people all around her that were pulling the strings, and she was just the face of it all.
Oh, of course.
But yeah, then the question is how much power is in the monarchy, right? Not just her, but the monarchy itself, right? And we're going to see.
Well, it probably depends on the person. If the person's willing to take the power that they do potentially have and use it themselves, or if you're somebody like her that maybe was like more passive, they had to do it around her maybe secretly. But like if you have somebody who wants that power, they would do it more themselves out in the open.
Well, I think in the next few days, at least, we'll see a resurgence of monarchists, who sort of feel very aligned with her as a figurehead for the Britain that they know. And so we'll see that for a long time. But once that ends, and once there is a King Charles, and once there is a history of whatever his intentions were, it will be time to talk about that.